Now that the holidays are over with, it's time for everything to get back to normal. And that means comics are coming out this Wednesday, and quite a few of them can be categorized within the horror genre. Remember, this isn't a set of reviews. This is just a list of what you'll find when you head to comic shops this week in Comics Horror, July 12th, 2023. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Let's check out This Week in Comics Horror, July 12th, 2023. This Week in Horror Adaptations shows how popular horror franchises have continued their stories to comic book form. James Kuhoric and artists Jason Craig and Neil Vokes continue the story from Tom Holland's original screenplay of Fright Night. The third issue marks the return of Evil Ed, Charlie's best friend now turned into a vicious vampire. This is from American Mythology, as is Night of the Living Dead, Revenants number 4, which is a redefinition of the classic Romero film. In this issue, Ben and the survivors try a desperate escape before their refuge gets overwhelmed by zombies. Tokyo Pop continues to tell the story of how Jack Skellington fought Oogie Boogie to become the Pumpkin King in The Nightmare Before Christmas, Battle for the Pumpkin King number 4, and over at Dynamite, they bowed out of providing any ass and titties covers this week in favor of a new series featuring Disney's Gargoyles in Dark Ages number 1, which dives into the past when there was relative peace between the gargoyles and the humans, but the seeds of war were planted. This is from Gargoyles creator Greg Weisman and artist Drew Moss. This Week in Cullen Bunn Horror highlights the most prolific modern horror writer in comics today. In Cullen Bunn, Andrea Mutti, and Mad Cave Studios' A Legacy of Violence number 7, the story of age-old horrors and how it is passed down through one influential family continues. From Oni Press comes Lamentation number 3, and that's where Bunn delivers a modern take on a classic haunted house story. And more ghosts abound in Ghostlore number 3 from Bunn, Boom, and Vanessa Del Rey as a violent past is dealt with by a helpful ghost. That's a whole lot of ghost stories from Bunn this week. This Week in Hellboy Comics expands the already expansive Hellboy universe created by Mike Mignola and his writing partner Christopher Golden. PANYA, The Mummy's Curse, number 1, tells a story that takes place long before Hellboy and the BPRD existed, but delves into a threat that will soon matter very much to them. This one has moody art by Christopher Mitten and words provided by Chris Roberson. And Hellboy in Love number 5 deals with a more modern tale of Hellboy and an archaeologist he seems to dig quite a bit as they investigate some buried bones, and maybe, if Hellboy is lucky, he'll be able to bury a bone himself, if you know what I mean. It's called Hellboy in Love after all. This Week in Image Horror once again looks at 3 titles filled with terror from cover to cover. Haunt You Till the End number 2 is from Top Cow Productions. It tells a twisted tale of a group of friends who travel to the most haunted place on Earth. This one is from Ryan Cady and Uber artist Andrea Moody. A trio of friends travel to hell to rescue a kidnapped angel in Hell We Fight number 2 from John Layman and an artist named Jock. And just in case you're not getting enough Joshua Williamson from DC's Night Terrors series, he's got a series called Dark Ride coming out this week. The 7th issue delves into the dark history of a haunted amusement park and how it ties into the series' protagonist's family. And speaking of Night Terrors, This Week in DC Horror has the Night Terrors crossover continuing across their entire line of comics. I wasn't too impressed with the first week's offerings with this crossover. In a medium where heroes and villains often find themselves taking on their greatest fears, turns out a crossover promising the same isn't really that unique or interesting. Some of the issues, like Poison Ivy and Batman, had some interesting horror imagery, but for the most part, it really didn't work for me. Maybe this week's offerings will be better, since it's got talented writers Jeremy Adams, Alex Packnadel, Dennis Culver, Kenny Porter, and Mark Waid writing Zatanna, The Flash, Shazam, Robin, and Green Lantern. The main series, by Joshua Williamson, begins here as well as a new villain named Insomnia takes over Dr. Destiny's body and plunges the entire world into the nightmare realm. Let me know if you're reading this event, and if you are you liking it? There are two comics that I'm looking most forward to reading this week. The first is Svengoolie, Lost in Time, number 1. I grew up with Dr. Creep and Fritz the Night Owl hosting late-night horror shows as a kid in Ohio, so while I got in late to the Svengoolie train when I moved to Chicago a while back, I've been a fan since discovering him. Frank Miller Presents is debuting Sven's first comic series. I can't wait to see what kind of spooky hijinks Sven and his rubber chicken, Kerwin, get into. And Jeff Lemire has another new and offbeat horror adventure releasing this week called Fish Flies. This is a surreal tale about a lonely girl who forms a relationship with a giant fly creature. Just from that unsettling cover alone, I think I'm really going to dig this series. Well, those are 20 horror comics on the shelves this week. Surely there's something in there you'll find worth your time and money. Let me know which ones look good to you down in the comments.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. God live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside that